back to Shared News Quarantine Edition. Today, we are doing our first ever Listen to Your Heart recap. This is week 4. We're going to get into all the drama with Sheraton, Savannah, Julia, and Brandon. But before we do, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so we can keep you updated on all things happening in Bachelor Nation. As always, you guys, I am Renee Ariel, and I'm joined by the lovely, the wonderful Fiona Zaring.
Hello, hello.
So as you guys know, we've talked about it a little bit in our previous live streams. We have been watching Listen to Your Heart, and things have gotten very, very dramatic. There's a lot going on, especially last night. But before we get into the drama, there is a question that I really want to pitch to you guys because I was reading a bunch of articles talking about the show and last night's episode, and someone pointed out something that I didn't even notice as a viewer, and that is that Sheraton drinks red wine for breakfast. Here's the thing. Do we know it's red wine? For sure? No. But if you look at these screenshots where it's like a wine glass with what looks like red wine in it with the coloring, I mean, you put 2 and 2 together. So here's my question for the chat and Fiona Zaring. What are your thoughts on red wine for breakfast?
I did not notice this as a viewer, and I will have to go look at these screenshots because now I am so curious. Sometimes I feel like the show just seems timeless to me, like I can't even pinpoint what part of the day they're on ever, so maybe that's why I didn't notice it. Okay, as a red wine lover myself, I've never once had a hankering for it in the morning. Maybe a nice white wine, maybe a little mimosa action, but I don't think I would ever swap my morning coffee for a morning red. But you know what? Sheridan was really being put through the ringer. And if red wine is his drink and he needed a little morning boost, I guess whatever works for you, right? As long as it's not like a everyday real life occurrence, because that would just seem to be a little bit maybe stressful. What did you think about this?
I was shook, honestly, because I never noticed. I never paid attention. I guess when I'm watching the show, I don't really pay attention to like what they're drinking or eating. I just, I'm paying attention to the conversations. And then I saw all these screenshots of him like having breakfast with Julia with a glass of red wine and them all getting together in the living room with a glass of red wine. And for me, I guess I'm not a big red wine fan. Like, I like it. I don't love it. And the thought of having it first thing in the morning just confuses me. So I just thought that was super funny. And, actually, Kathy in the chat just said it could be cranberry juice versus red wine. Listen, it absolutely could be. Maybe he felt fancy. Maybe he wanted to put it in a wine glass.
Maybe they were running low on glasses.
Maybe they were running low on glasses every single time they screenshotted him. And Javier says, nothing wrong with some red wine in the morning. You guys are too funny. Listen, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, we have mimosas in the morning. It's just more so the fact it's red wine. Like, I don't think of that as like a breakfast alcohol personally.
I hope that Sheridan just hops on his Instagram or something to let us know what his breakfast bev was. If it was like a cranberry juice cocktail, if he has a specific breakfast red we all need to get to trying. we should ask him to follow up on this. We should find out.
We should.
Not that we couldn't go on about red wine and our pal Sheridan all day, because it is a fascinating conundrum, but I really want to get to these couple swap dates, because leave it to the Bachelor to set us up, to introduce us to couples, to create a love triangle, to finally give us peace, and then go, you know what? Let's just mix it, change it, rearrange it, and stress everybody the hell out. The first few, really not that much to report on, honestly. Just kind of seemed like some people hanging out outside of the house and waiting to go back and hang out with who they love. That would be Jamie and Ryan after a bit of a rocky place. They started off sort of flirting. They weren't sure. Ryan definitely was interested in Jamie, had a little bit of a blow when she obviously picked Trevor, but they're just friends now. They both sort of sat down, talked about how they're happy in their relationships, and that was that. I was impressed with it. It seemed mature. It seemed really thoughtful, and yeah, that's really all I have to say. Chris and Rudy, just friends, have always been just friends. I don't know if we even saw a little connection blossom from them in the very beginning, or if this was just super random, because I've always sort of just associated Chris and Brie. Kind of more interesting than their time together itself was that conversation Matt and Rudy were having right before she left for the date. I hope they pick that conversation back up, because while they do seem to be a really great team, they have some great chemistry. Conversations like that need to be had. So I think they'll get there. I think they'll pick that back up. The funniest part of their date was the spying with the binoculars. I'm really curious, do you think producers handed those binoculars to them, or does Rudy just carry them around in her purse? What are your thoughts?
1,000% producers handed that to them. I thought that was really cute, because I think the producers, like, after they set up these dates and were hoping like multiple couples may be shaken up and then they weren't, they're like, okay, well, we have to make this somewhat entertaining for television. Like, what, everyone's just happy in their couple. So I think that's why they threw in the binoculars. I will say, I do believe we're going to get the second half of that conversation with Rudy and Matt because of next week's promo. It definitely seems like there's going to be some trouble in paradise with their relationship, which I would be really bummed about, because you guys, they sound so good together. Like, they're amazing. I want them to be in a band.
They're so talented. You and I, Renee and I, were talking about this before we started filming. Like, their voices pair so nicely together. Forget their onstage chemistry and the couple of it all. Just purely listening to them sing together is incredible. One thing that I will say about Rudy and Matt is their path was not straightforward. It was messy. So having some sort of trouble in paradise, while I want it to be just happy times and I want them to get along really well, they didn't start off on the best foot. So hopefully they go through whatever it is that they need to go through, and then they can move forward. You know, there's definitely something there.
Yeah. Totally agree. Jay Jobs says that Chris Harrison did not want to call out one isolated couple, Julia and Brandon. So they had two others as a ruse. I agree, and we're going to get into that date. But Jay Jobs also said, thumbs up, like the video. Please do that so we can continue to cover Listen to Your Heart. But you guys, let's get into the nitty gritty, because, oh my God, Julia and Brandon, what a roller coaster we went through last night. I kid you not, so I was watching the show with my mom, and I had a very difficult time getting through this episode because of Julia and Brandon. I was cringing. I knew something bad was going to happen. But let's just start with their date, shall we? So basically, on their date, unlike the other two couples, it was actually planned to, like, really pressure them to make a good decision. Like, you know, Ryan and Jamie got like the spa date. It was they had like a famous songwriter who's worked with Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift hang out with them to help them write a song about their relationship. And the whole show is about connecting love with music. So like already it's set up to be a bit emotional. So they end up writing a song about how they want each other, basically, to remind you of some lyrics. One was, I'm here to find the right thing. I think it would be doing a disservice to ourselves if we didn't pursue it, if it's real, if it's there. So then they basically perform this song that they literally just wrote and decide that they are going to end things with Sheraton and Savannah. To be frank with you guys, we only saw, and I don't know if you noticed this, Julia's ITMs in the moment interviews, like they showed none from Brandon. Every ITM with Julia was like, oh, it's Brandon. I still feel it. I know it's there. We hear nothing from Brandon until he does talk to Savannah. But like that whole date, we're only getting Julia's perspective. It seems as though something's going to happen with these two after the fact. And I was so nervous about it.
Here's the thing. I have felt the whole Julia, Sheridan, Brandon situation has been really difficult for me as a viewer from day one, because Julia, I think, initially was attracted to Sheridan. Sheridan was all in basically from minute one, or at least that's how they showed it to us. And I think she then met Brandon and didn't dive all in with Brandon, didn't end it all the way with Sheridan, and created a mess from the minute it all began. Because I'm pretty sure she knew that Sheridan wasn't the one, and she's known all along that she was looking for Brandon, but had these doubts considering Brandon wasn't all in with her. And honestly, at this point, it felt like she was just looking for an excuse. She was just looking for validation that she was right and that she needed to walk away from Sheridan. Whereas Brandon was not on that same page. Brandon is genuinely interested in Savannah. So that's why it's been such a disaster from minute one, is it almost just felt like Julia just wanted to be let off the hook. She just wanted someone to tell her she was right, that there was something there, and she was going to dump Sheridan. Boom, no problem with it. Brandon? Hello, clearly not on the same page.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm scrolling through the chat and it froze on me, but I saw a comment I wanted to say. Okay, I guess we'll go back to the dates for now and I'll refresh my chat in a second. So here's the thing. I feel as though the difficulty with Brandon, in my opinion, really is stemming from the fact that he was all in with Savannah so much to the point that Julia in the last week's episode, felt as though they were being fake because they were flaunting their relationship so much, right?
Yeah.
So he never really answered for any of that conversationally with Julia, right? They never talked any of that out. They never explained the fact that Brandon seemingly was all in with another woman. They just sat down and they just wrote a song and they performed it. And then what? They were ready to break up with the other people. That was sort of my struggle with it all, to be honest with you. What did you think of how they ended the date? That moment right before they went back to the house.
The thing is, I was confused where they left off. Like, I knew that Julia was going to end things with Sheridan. That was very clear to me. But because we didn't get any interviews with Brandon, I didn't know where his head was at. And I think they were constantly teasing, like, from the beginning of the episode, when when they do like these promos for the rest of the episode or whatever, like teasers, it kept showing that chaos was about to happen. And like, it showed one clip of Brandon being like, okay, I want to make things right with you. And so you knew things were about to get messy, and you would know. I had no idea what Brandon was going to start off even saying to Savannah,
right?
Because obviously things were going to end in disaster. And
so
it was right.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were totally right. Let's dive into the aftermath of it all. So obviously, as we said, Julia, no reservations. She had a hard time. The conversation was sad. She went home. She dumped Sheridan. That was it. I felt for him, especially in the moment where she looked at him and said, "Why are you being so mean?" I was like, you have been so mean to him from day one. Maybe not exactly in this kind of tone, but my God, let the guy have an emotional reaction. That was hard to watch. I really felt for him. But I think we should just start diving into Brandon's behavior of it all, because that's where it truly gets messy. He goes to talk to Savannah, and it's kind of mean. It's a little cold, and then all of a sudden he's all in, right? I mean, it seemed as though for a second he was going to talk to Savannah. Maybe he was on the same page as Julia. Maybe he was going to end it. And then, oh, nope, he's all in. Here's what I want to know your opinion on, Renee. I loved the way Savannah handled that conversation. I loved what she did. I loved how she stood up for herself. How did you feel about how that all played out?
I was so proud of Savannah, because I think we have seen her kind of give in to Brandon's manipulation. It's no secret, if you've watched the show for more than 5 minutes, Brandon is a bit of a liar. So from even when they first had that conversation about Julia, and he really downplayed it, he was like, yeah, no, like I knew that, like, it was you. I just had to talk to her, but I did that. That's in the past. Like, I want to move forward with you. And then with this scene, we saw once again the manipulation of, like, why do you have attitude right now? Can't we talk like adults? I think it's you being closed off. And like, he somehow twisted it. And I think he realized he had made a mistake, because it seemed as though he didn't really care about Julia or Savannah. And this is just basing off of kind of how we see him treat the girls. It seems like he's just in it to play the game. And I felt that way
Totally.
because when he was talking to Savannah in the beginning before she walked away the first time, there was just no care behind it. There was no love behind that conversation. It was just like, this is like you. This is like a you problem. The second she walked away and he realized he wasn't going to get what he wanted, which he needs a partner in this. And I think he realized he wants Savannah to be his partner, whether that be for personal reasons or just the fact that he thinks that they perform better together. He changed his mind and was like, okay, I need to like make right with this. But I think it was for selfish reasons. I don't think it's because he wanted to make nice with Savannah because he cares about her. I think it's because he cares about himself. So the way that she completely like shut it down and said, no, I don't want to be a choice. I want to be the choice, and that's it. And she, when she walked away, I was so, so, so proud of her because she finally kind of told him off and didn't go back on anything she said, regardless of how he tried to convince her out of it.
Totally. And my chat is back and I saw a comment in here. Someone said, let's see, J Jobs, Fiona, so are you saying that both Julia and Brandon were players? Yes, I am. I think they were both players. I think Julia knew what she was doing. I think that she wanted to be with somebody. And I don't think that is an excuse for not letting Sheridan go. Does that make sense? I think that,
yes,
and I everybody makes mistakes. And I actually went on her Instagram and she wrote up this whole thing about how she's finally getting to watch her behavior back and she's disappointed in herself and would have done things differently. And it's been such a learning experience. So everyone is allowed to make mistakes and hopefully you grow from them. That's no like hatred towards the mistakes she made, but it is not only Brandon's fault that this got really messy, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that Julia wanted somebody and then Sheraton wanted her. And so she felt comfortable staying with Sheraton. But then the thing is, it could have been Brandon and it could have been someone else. It could have been anyone else that she had interest in. She would have left Sheraton high and dry. And I think but the thing is, I think Sheridan knew, I know I keep calling him Sheraton and not LK is like it's Sheridan, not Sheraton. I just think of Sheraton hotels. I can't help it. Okay, we're only 4 weeks in. But I think Sheridan kind of knew that Julia was playing him a little bit or like wasn't all in. But it's one of those situations where you like the person, so you want it to be different and you hope it'll change and you hope that then they'll like you more. And we just saw him continue to get played and to be picked second, or to just continue being an option for Julia. And it was hard to watch. I felt bad for him.
It was so hard to watch. Let's talk about our girl, Natasha, for a second, because once everything is settled, we see Sheridan go home. So sad. Yes. I really hope he has a successful career out of all of this because he's so talented and he really came on the show and got his heart broken. So feel for him. We see Savannah dumped Brandon in her epic walk-off. She stayed true to herself. She got out of there. Now we've got this new couple, I guess, floating around. And Natasha did her thing and asked the hard questions and really stirred this duo up. What did you think of her blatantly asking what he would have done if Savannah stayed just at the breakfast table with everybody?
Here's the thing. I think it depends on my intentions with the person that I am dating on the show. Because if Julia was all in with Brandon, which we pretty much thought she was, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, especially how she exited eventually, but I would want to know if I were Julia and I was all in with a guy, that I was his second choice. So I don't think it was wrong of Natasha to flat out ask him. I also admire the fact that she did tell Julia, though I do think the timing was kind of crappy, and I do agree with Julia on that. But ask the questions. And honestly, Brandon had no trouble answering it, which I also found super weird. You would think because he's such a good liar, he could at least lie about that in that moment when Julia's sitting right next to him covering her ear. It's just like, what is happening?
Honestly, I think that Brandon and Julia from minute one, like I said, didn't really know what they wanted, didn't really know what they were fighting for, were confused. And so they were trying to keep all doors open at all times. I think Julia genuinely on a level really did want Brandon, but I don't think Brandon knew what he wanted at all. I think that's what part of
No.
this mess was. And you know what? Maybe literally sitting there in that awkward moment, that's when he realized, like, shit, it was Savannah. Now she's gone. Oops. Like maybe that was like a true moment of honesty from him. I don't know. It's hard to say. I agree with you on the timing of telling her right before the performance. I thought it was tough, and I'm curious what your take on this will be.
Yeah.
Julia was sort of sitting there on cloud nine, really, really gushing about sort of honestly romanticizing the journey her and Brandon had to get to this moment, because it has been messy and people did get hurt. And she had a very like sunshine and rainbows take on it. And I kind of wonder if Natasha felt like in that moment, okay, if I don't say something now, it's never. Do you know what I mean? Because Julia was so over the moon and thought they were in such a good place and was really, really gushing openly to everyone. And I wonder if Natasha just felt like, okay, if she's going to know, she's got to know, because she thinks they're here. I'm pretty sure they're here. And if I don't say something now, it's going to be too late. It's going to look like I was holding back, or I should have told her sooner. That being said, regardless of what her intent was for saying it, then totally bad timing.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I question her timing, because when Julia made the point of like, why didn't you just tell me this yesterday? Why didn't you had the whole day? And I agree. I think that she absolutely could have told her yesterday. So like it was J Job said in the chat that they're in a competition. Is it wrong for Natasha to get in Julia's head before a competition to help Natasha win? The thing is, that's what it seems to have come down to, though. Do we think that Natasha did this for the purest reasons or because it is a competition? That being said, though, if she did get into Julia's head, or if it broke them up, then they're on the wrong show already, because it's about being a strong fit together. Like, it's not just America's Got Talent. It's also about the dating aspect. So I don't know if telling her the day before would have helped at all. If anything, it might have just given them a chance to even perform, because perhaps they would have just broken up the day before. So we don't really know. I really like Julia, so I don't want to judge. And I will say Julia has been one to kind of go at the other girls in the house, like when she went at Savannah, which I thought was pretty uncalled for. So I'm going to leave this and just kind of give Natasha the benefit of the doubt. But I do want to get into performances, you guys, because oh my gosh. So let's go through, first of all, who the judges were. We had Tony Braxton, which was super cool.
Wow.
Andy Grammer. And then from Bachelor Nation, Rachel and Brian. So Rudy and Matt performed Tennessee Whiskey, and they absolutely slayed. They did so, so well. I love whenever they perform. Then we had Jamie and Trevor do the song Like I'm Going to Lose You by Meghan Trainor. It was a little bit awkward because Jamie was nervous once again, and she's very dependent on Trevor, which we'll get into. Brie and Chris performed Lover by the one, the only Taylor Swift. Yes, I am going to bring up the fact that Rachel Lindsay said on television that she is not a Swiftie, and I did not let it go just yet. And next was the disaster that was Julia and Brandon singing We Belong, which they did not belong, and Natasha and Ryan, who were definitely the best performance of the night, in my opinion, along with, I would say, Rudy and Matt. But performance-wise, just how they like really did a good job interacting with the crowd. Like, they were very, very great performers, singing You Are the Best Thing. And they're becoming one of my favorite couples. I'm really into it. But first of all, Fiona, what was your favorite and least favorite performance?
Oh boy. Well, I love Rudy and Matt. I love how they performed together. I think they were super, super talented, and I love that song. So I think they were my favorite. Natasha and Ryan, though, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Natasha kills it as a performer. So I also loved them. Hands down, no question, though, Julia and Brandon was super uncomfortable. I think they're both more talented than they even showed in that performance too. It was so uncomfortable. I think it didn't even showcase how good of singers they are. I mean, seriously, because Julia performing with Sheridan, that voice had me like chills. And this performance, nothing. So
Nothing.
I have to say it was really, it sort of spoke to the whole sort of out there philosophy of the show with music and romance and how they're so intertwined. Like seeing the place that those two are in and then seeing this performance, I was like, wow, Chris Harrison, what a genius. He's like a love
I
doctor,
know.
like so smart
Because
to put all this together.
and like you really do see it because even with like Rudy and Matt, like we know they're the ones having more fun. And that's pointed out in every performance about how you guys must be having fun. Jamie and Taylor, the way that Jamie and Trevor, the way that they perform on stage, it's very clear that there's like a bit of codependency. The way that Jamie like the way she looks at him and the way she performs with him is very look at that image on the screen right now. It makes sense with their dynamic. Not that I think that they have the best dynamic, but it just shows through their performances. Then with Bree and Chris, we had Bree tell Chris that she loved him after the performance, which was really, really cute. They're super in love, and I'm so here for it. And then Julia and Brandon, we see Julia giving it like 110% and trying real hard to be like, I don't care that I was your second choice. And then we have Brandon who's like, what did I do? You know, and that was very clear on stage. And then Natasha and Ryan are just stars. Like, I'm sorry, but they are just so cute, very comfortable with each other and themselves. That's what I think is the difference between them and a lot of these performers is you can tell that they are so sure and confident in who they are as people and who they are as a unit. And that is really important to have both. Whereas some of these couples only have one or the other.
Totally. I think that there's two ways that these performances can sort of show chemistry, like Rudy and Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're confident performers. I think they're confident musicians. I think that they vibe really, really well as musicians and as people, but they are not a confident team as a relationship yet, right? They're still figuring that out. And what was one of their notes? Like a little bit nervous, like, but you guys are really talented. You're really great. Like, were they great performers? Totally. Natasha and Ryan, though, I feel like, honestly, here's the thing. I think couples are really, really great when one person has a really, really big personality and the other person is a little more reserved. I think there's something really cute about that, and I see that with them. Mm-hmm. Ryan is a little more quiet. He's not a huge, like, out there guy, but he listens to Natasha. That cute moment where she said, like, don't you love gossiping with me? Like, they balance each other out in a way that is just, it's simple. It makes sense, and it works, and it allows them to get on stage and shine as individuals and together, which is really, really cool to see.
Totally agree.
Couldn't agree more with you. Did you, as a Swiftie, fully just die over that Brie and Chris duet?
It was so cute. Like, it was so cute. When I first found out they were performing a Taylor Swift song, I was already through the roof. But they sang that song so beautifully. I was so here for it. I'm like waiting for Taylor Swift to make a tweet about it because I'm sure she will. I loved it. Honestly, I loved all the performances except for Julia and Brandon and Jamie and Trevor. And I actually like the song, Like I'm Going to Lose You, but I have a hard time. For me, it gets a little bit cringy. You feel the awkwardness, the nervousness, and you got to be confident on that stage.
Totally.
So,
we'll see. In the chat, Right Brain Liz said, I loved Rudy and Matt's performance. I am enjoying watching Brie and Chris fall in love. The way Chris looks at her is so sweet. So true. J Job said, is Jamie bad casting? Is she too nervous to be a singer and be on the show? I don't think Jamie is bad casting because I think they were looking for people to really go on a journey as a musician and as a person in love. And Jamie is clearly on a journey that it's different. So I think it's not necessarily bad casting, but she is, I will agree, incredibly nervous to perform, which is interesting. Let's see. Deborah Deal said, Julia, I think she's a beautiful tone and wonderful range in her voice, but unfortunately not in her perception of choosing a partner. Deborah, telling it like it is. Let's talk about the aftermath of these performances.
Oh gosh.
I would really like to get into the fact that after everything was said and done, Julia was mad at Brandon for not performing well on stage. Julia, Julia. What a mess we've made. After everything that happened, I was really just hoping for a moment from her that was like, you know what? We weren't meant to be. Maybe the chemistry really wasn't there the way I saw it, and that's why our performance didn't go well. But instead, we got a Brandon didn't do a good job. What did you think of her thoughts on their performance, Renee?
Yeah, honestly, like it didn't surprise me that she said that. I was also hoping for a full circle moment where she realized perhaps she made the wrong choice, which she did say, like, I wish I chose Sheraton when she was exiting, because obviously we know she was eliminated with Brandon. But she also has been saying in interviews post the show, like in a recent interview on the Bachelor Happy Hour podcast, she said once again that she wishes she chose Sheridan and said that she hopes he sees the interview. Just throwing that out there. So I hope he doesn't take her back, honestly, but just want to put that out there. Julia, she'll probably learn watching it back. I think a lot of the time we learn lessons either looking back at what we did, which she has to literally physically watch herself on television and the mistakes she made. So I think she'll learn her lesson. I am happy that Julia and Brandon went home because it's like they're obviously not meant to be. You know, like their relationship isn't going to go further. Brandon's still going to be half in, half out, just like he was with Savannah, except like for Savannah, he was like 80% in, 20% out. So I don't know. They'll both live and learn. I will say though, I didn't like that that she then blamed Natasha the way that she did after the fact, like once again, after their performance, blamed her for, messing her up when, like, I get it. It was a little bit of sabotage, but you can't blame her for your performance, you know?
No, here's the thing. I'm not a singer, but like I was a dancer. Things go wrong before performances, right? Like it is your job as a performer to get on stage and show up and, like, as cheesy as it is, like show your truth, right? Like doesn't matter. I had so many girlfriends back in the day at high school dance competitions. Like a friend of mine was dumped right before getting on stage and performing this lovey-dovey duet. Like you just push through. And I'm not trying to limit the amount of emotional response she had. It puts you in a bad headspace. There definitely was an effect from the conversation Natasha had to her to the moment she got on stage. Totally was affected. And I get that. But Natasha is not the reason she went home, right? The place their relationship was in, if it was in the kind of place that it should have been, then what Natasha said shouldn't have mattered, right? Like, totally. Or even so, as a performer, if you can turn it off and just let your emotions as a couple come through on stage, that could have carried them through too. And it didn't, because it's just not there. They didn't have this Romeo and Juliet love story. They had a messy love triangle that, to be honest with you, we didn't even get to see why they were so invested in it. Like, I never really saw this deep, life-altering connection between her and Brandon. So, I don't know. Nope. That's just my take. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but I was not unhappy to see them go, because I wasn't rooting for them as a pair.
I agree. I wasn't either. I was not sold in the relationship. I am happy that at this point we have like the strongest couples, and I guess we'll see how it all plays out from here. Fingers crossed Rudy and Matt stay together after the promo that I saw of them like not having the best conversation. But make sure you guys let us know what your predictions are for next episode, and we will be right back here answering your questions, talking about the show, dishing on why Brandon probably wasn't the best guy on the show. Just kidding. He's off the show now, but we'll still maybe talk about it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you guys know exactly when we're going live and can interact with us in the chat. In the meantime, if you guys would like to keep up with Fiona and I, you can follow me at Renee Ariel on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And Fiona, where can they follow you?
Oh, you can find me on all of those same places at Fiona Zaring.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Can't wait to talk about this very dramatic show next week. So we'll see you guys then.
Bye.